Being plural is a curse, no doubt, but plurality is also bliss. A curse and a bliss, but nothing in between. Hey all and every many, thank yous for switching in to Housemates for Life, a podcast powered by plurals for plurals and everybody else who wants to hear about the insanely awesome world of plurality. Here we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful sides of sharing a body and mind. In this episode, we will briefly talk about what plurality actually is and what it can look like. And we will talk about our own experiences, how we experience plurality as a whole and also individually. And in the end, we will touch on some issues and explain a bit why we personally think that awareness about plurality is important. We are the voices of just a rather very insane system, aka Jarvis, and I am your host Matt, and I'm here together with my hatmates. If you enjoy listening to our podcast Housemates for Life, please tell a friend or more and leave a like, subscribe, rate, comment, and everything else you do to show your support and appreciation. Many thanks. Now let's get on with our show. So if you turn on this podcast, you either are plural or you wonder what the actual heck is plurality. Plurality is such a broad and complex concept. We would need to make an entire podcast series and we would have to interview all the plurals of this world, and then still we wouldn't understand the full scope of what it actually means to be plural. It's kind of the same to ask, what does it even mean to exist and consciously experience the world? It's not an easy question to answer, to be honest. To explain plurality simply, people who take the label plural all experience two or more entities, self-aware entities inside a single brain and a physical body. What that actually looks like and means varies from plural to plural, and also from member to member within a plural group. But we will talk about this a bit later in this episode and in general throughout this whole podcast series. I'll just mention a few of the most common terms just so we are on the same page and you actually understand what I'm actually talking about. So, a plural person or group is often referred to as a system or collective. The members of a plural system also have various terms and also terminology that varies from plural to plural, and some call each other identities, alters, parts, system members, sysmates, or very frequently headmates, just like housemates, but inside your head. And that's also what we usually call each other, because in essence, it's like living together but inside a body instead of a house. Now you might wonder, what forms can plurality take? We personally believe that every brain is plural to some degree, and the ability to split or form multiple identities, also known as headmates, varies from person to person. So some might need to be exposed to severe or repeated trauma for it to happen. And for some, even relatively mild trauma may be enough to form headmates. And some are able to develop them consciously at will. And for some, it may just happen spontaneously. And for others, it just may never happen at all. We view singlehood, so one being in one body, as just one extreme end of a vast spectrum. But we can't actually imagine any human as truly and purely singular for their entire life. I mean, why would we as humans constantly talk about things like, oh, my inner child, my inner critic, and my inner demons are talking? Oh, this is what my voice of reason is saying. Or, This was just my parent talking out of me. Or you probably all know this one. I'm a different person than I was a couple years ago. And so on and so on. So we all kind of have some relation with plurality. And consciousness, memory, identity are all such vague concepts. And how could anyone think that it's more plausible there must exist only one single entity in one brain, rather than believing that our minds are made up of multiple facets or parts? And for some humans, it goes even beyond that, such that we have a strong feeling of being multiple people with individual self-concepts, each with their own facets and parts, still within one single brain. Plurality takes many forms, and we will not have time to go over everything. There's a lot of information out there that you can look up on, read up on. There's actually no limit to being plural and what it may look like. And it's a completely, purely subjective experience. And even if it may look like from the outside as simply having mood swings, it's still a completely different experience and feeling for the members of a system. So most of the time you won't even notice a switch from the outside, but the system member can clearly feel a change in the way they perceive and process everything. And sometimes us as headmates, we don't even notice a switch by ourselves. We personally often use a bus analogy for our system. So we are basically, as a whole, we are the bus. And then there's the front row where the drivers are sitting. So the people who are fronting, they are holding the steering wheel, and the grip on the wheel can be quite tight or sometimes very loose. So right now I feel like I have a relatively tight grip on the wheel. I'm doing my thing. I feel like I'm the one talking mostly, but it starts feeling a bit loose. It's getting late today, and it might be that my headmate is switching in sooner or later. When we are co-conscious, then it feels like for us that someone is sitting next to us on the seat next to the driver's seat. And when we are co-fronting, we are kind of both holding the steering wheel together. And this can be a bit messy sometimes if we have different opinions or wants and needs where we want to drive the bus. But we try to compromise and keep the bus in a direction that everyone is happy with. Next, we have the second row that is directly behind the driver's seat. The headmates sitting there, we call them the influencers because they passively influence the direction of where we are steering. You can just imagine them hitting your shoulder from behind and telling you, "Hey, look, I want to go this way," and then spontaneously you make a left turn with your bus, and sometimes you don't even know why you're turning around the corner. Sometimes you actually know, oh, this was my headmate telling me to do this and this and that. But this is really just passively influencing. It's actually the headmate who's in the driver's seat is actually fronting and doing the steering while we get the input from behind. And then we have, in the back of our bus, we have the back seats where a couple of headmates sitting there who are either never fronting or they have been fronting in the past and are kind of retired now. They don't come to the front anymore for various reasons, or we rarely hear from them. So they are too far in the back. We can't really hear where they actually want to steer the bus. So we either got to wait until they come to the front in these rare occasions, or we just never hear from them. And then sometimes we're in a state where it feels like We are sitting right at the front window, so we can see everything that the bus is doing. We can see the direction the bus is going, but it feels like being on autopilot. And we can't really look inside the bus. We're really at the front window, and we can't turn around. We can't look who's actually driving. We can guess by the direction the bus is going, but it doesn't feel like sure. Like from the outside, it might seem, oh yeah, this is clearly Matt fronting. But our subjective feeling is just, I don't know who I am. And that can be a bit confusing, it can be scary. But we've known our system for a year now, but more than a year. And at some point you just get used to it. It still sucks. But you kind of know, oh yeah, I'm in this state again. It will pass in a few days. And then you just go on with your plural life and driving the bus. Maybe one more point about how memory works for us. So we have a shared memory cloud. So it's kind of like we have this one computer with files on it, and everyone has access to the same files, but we all log on to the computer with a different account. So we all see and remember the same things, but we are still different people looking at these memories from different points of view and opinions. But we will talk about memory and how our system works more in detail throughout this podcast anyway. So now we want to talk about what does being plural mean to us as individual hatmates. And for me, Matt, personally, I just love being part of a system through and through. It's the best thing, I swear, it's the best thing that has ever happened in my life. And I just love being this kind of caretaker, protector person. I just love being there for my system as much as I love being there for my outside friends, for example. And it gives me kind of a purpose. Not that I need one, but it's just cool to have one, you know? And it really motivates me to be an even better version of myself, because I'm not just living for myself and my own joy, but also for my system. And there's this famous quote, I do it for my system. It's just a great motivator to overcome difficult tasks. Also, knowing about the system and myself, realizing who I truly am, actually helps me to become more and more who I always have been. For example, doing this podcast series, we would have never ever considered it in the past because most of my hatmates have zero interest in this. And we just don't have to squeeze everything into one singular identity anymore. We're now free to explore and express ourselves individually, and we're not forced to make sense of our internal chaos and try to appear coherent in a way. So, for example, now my hatmate Will doesn't always hold me back on a leash so much anymore, and I can just unfold my true potential and all. I just suddenly feel so much more multidimensional than I have ever been. I can be more than I've always been because we're not restricted anymore to a single identity, and that's just awesome. Plurality is awesome, and everybody should be plural. So this was my opinion, my view on this. I will hand over to my hatmate, Yori. So I would try to switch in now. It's a bit difficult for me to speak so spontaneously. But yeah, this is Yori. And what does plurality mean to me? For me, it has always been a rather spiritual experience. I always used to be very self-reflective and was just curious about the essence of consciousness and such. And I was mainly the one who kind of discovered our hatmates and later our system itself. And to me, it was always very healing to recognize these quote unquote other versions of myself and, yeah, just treating them like friends. We had some struggles in the past with some of our headmates, but just being kind and empathetic towards each other has really helped us being more emotionally aware and stable overall. I mean, we still got a lot of work to do, but at least knowing about our system and members just helps us so much with our mental health. And it also has helped us to cope with depression or anxiety. And plurality has been more healing to us than actually damaging. And we don't see plurality as a disorder per se. Maybe there are issues related to dissociation and post traumatic stress, but being a system is just a great coping mechanism to deal with such issues. And I just like the idea of being part of something that is just bigger than myself alone. It just makes me humble somehow. I kind of see myself as a servant of nature, and our body is my temple, and our mind is my sanctuary, and I try to take really good care of them. And since discovering our system, I feel more and more like kind of a spirit rather than an active member of society. So I don't really front that much and take part in our outside life directly. I do it from time to time, like now, but I feel like I have had my time in the past. My greatest task was discovering our system, and now it's up to my siblings to find their own paths in life. My time in the physical world kind of has come to an end, and I just prefer living as this spirit on the inside of our system. And I just like taking care of my headmates when they need me. And I've kind of become our guardian of our morals and values. And I just love my role. Now, next will be Will speaking, my headmate Will. Okay, so this is Will now. Just to be clear, we both Yuri and I, we recorded our parts later after the whole podcast, after Matt has done the rest of the episode. We just want to be fair and open that we don't just suddenly switch and then switch back. And I mean, right now it works quite well because we're well rested and we have taken the time to record this, but usually it's not that simple. Just saying that so other systems might listening and don't feel kind of, I don't know what I want to say. I hope you just know what I mean. If not, well, screw me. Okay, what does being plural mean to me? Well, so for me personally, being plural just means being invisible. People look at me, but they don't really see me. Even if I tell them who I am, for most people it's just difficult, if not impossible, to understand that I'm an autonomous individual and not independent, but separated from Matt, for example. And people usually tend to see me rather as this one person having a bad mood because I'm not as happy as my headmates, for example. But I would rather be perceived as one individual that just prefers being more quiet and reserved, and the others being more social and funny. I don't know. And when I'm out at front and I just feel fine, like completely myself, people won't come at me and greet me with, "Hi, Will, how are you doing?" No, instead, people just look at me worried and ask, "You're not your usual happy self. What's wrong with you?" And then people tend to avoid me because I'm not as popular as my headmates. Or I try to get better at my self-esteem. But yeah, ironically, being many makes pretty lonely towards the outside world. And being plural means making compromises. I can't just live my life on my own. I can't have everything I want. I can't use my time the way I like. There's this other guy who wants to record this podcast, and I like supporting him. I like doing this, but I would never have chosen this for myself. I share a body, a mind, my lifetime with others, and feeling truly fulfilled is something we rarely feel as a whole, because what makes one of us happy may make the other feel bad. Where one of us finds belonging in the community, the other may feel out of place. And these nagging feelings always keep lingering at the back of our mind, no matter who is fronting. So the only place where we all find true belonging all together is the plural community. Because here we all get to be ourselves the way we like. Being ourselves is really difficult, especially in social contexts. We spontaneously mix and blend together or passively influence each other. It's a constant feeling of being possessed or out of control. It's not nice at all, honestly. On the upside, I love my system. I love my handmaids. They're my best friends. The closest friends I ever had and probably ever will have. They are very dear to me, and I would just never trade them with anything. I wouldn't even know how to live my life by myself. I've never learned anything else than this. We've always been a system, even though we haven't always been consciously aware of it. But we just can't imagine life as a singular person. We generally have no idea or grasp of what that looks like, and how do you live your life as just one? Like, how? Maybe some singlets listening to this could tell us in the comments or contact us. I may struggle a lot with our situation, being a system and all, but I'd equally struggle with life as a singular person, so I might actually feel more lonely than I feel with my handmaids around. And to put it in a nutshell, being plural is a curse, no doubt. And by all means, I don't wish that upon anyone out there. But plurality is also bliss. A curse and a bliss, but nothing in between. Now Matt is going to continue with the rest of the episode. Have fun! So this is Matt again, and the last topic that we would like to talk about is why awareness about plurality is important, or why we think it is important. So there are so many dimensions to being plural, even within one and the same system. So it's important to acknowledge that and raise awareness about it. There's so much stigma around plurality, and even expert opinions don't always find common ground about what plurality actually is. And this is the most dangerous part, because trying to define something so diverse and subjective like plural experiences, you can't just bundle it together in a few diagnostic criteria, then put a label on it and say, that's it, that's plurality. It just doesn't work like that. And we, as much as many other plurals, have experienced great harm because people rely on decades-old research rather than listening to what we have to report. And this happens just to so many plurals. And it's so damaging when you're in a position of insecurity, self-doubt, fear of ostracism, and then being told by so-called, quote-unquote, experts or trusted friends that you're wrong, that you're delusional, or that they think they know you better than you yourselves. And we think research on plurality is immensely important, and we think it is done best when seeking out open dialogue with those who have lived experiences. So far, research has mainly focused on DID, so dissociative identity disorder, where plurality is regarded as part of a clinical disorder because people may suffer from amnesia, dissociation, and other struggles in their daily life. But a lot of plurals don't see themselves as disordered, or feel like they are no longer disordered after learning to live healthily as a plural system and learned cooperation among themselves. But also many plurals report that they have been denied to have a positive experience with their plurality because some experts and especially media portray it as this extremely miserable condition and there's no way a plural person could ever live a happy, healthy life. Even within the community itself, there exists beliefs that people speaking positively about plurality must fake a mental health condition. And this is shit, to be frank. Either you feel forced to feel miserable about who you are, or you feel forced to feel like faking who you are, which also makes you feel miserable again. Can we just stop and accept that plural people exist, whether disordered or not, whether trauma history or not? Being plural is just another way of processing the world within and around us. So for some, it may be a burden, for others helpful, most are probably somewhere in between. There's no inherent advantage or disadvantage of being plural or singular, except maybe that society is very well adapted for singular people, and things like a simple conversation can already be ultra complex for plurals because rarely anybody is used to talking to multiple people in one body. It's not that hard actually once you got used to the concept, honestly. And so that's why we think it's important that we as plural systems put ourselves out there. Show people what it's like to be plural, how different the experience is for everyone and every many. We don't want to throw out facts or information about plurality in this podcast series. We just want to tell you about our own individual experiences and show you just one of many examples of systemhood. Because no system is like another. We are also just one of many. And this is it. This is all we had to say for this episode on plurality. Now we would like to hear from you all. What does plurality actually mean to you as a system or to you individually? And why do you think awareness is important? Or maybe you think it's not as important as we portray it here? Tell us your views in the comments or contact us. This episode was brought to you by the Voices of Jarvis, with Matt as your host and my headmates Yuri and Will. Thank you all beautiful souls for listening and your support. If you enjoyed this episode and think it brought a little bit of value to your life, please tell a friend or more and leave a like, subscribe, rate, comment, and everything else you do to show your support and appreciation. Follow us on the podcast platform of your choice and visit our website housematesforlife.com so you never miss the latest news about our podcast and more. If you have feedback, questions, suggestions, please don't hesitate to write a comment or contact us. As I always say, let your personality shine brighter than your eyes and your confidence shout louder than your voice. Until next time with Housemates for Life. And now at the end, have some outtakes for your shuckle muscle. Blah, shuckle is a Pokemon, isn't it? And now at the end, have some outtakes for your chuckle muscle. Alright, Maddie boy is back. What do I have to say? I don't know. In this episode, we will briefly touch on what is plurality. And in the end, we will touch on some issues and explain why we think that awareness about plurality is actually very important. This sounded so pretentious. We personally use quite frequently a analogy, a bus analogy. Blah, I will start this again. I just suddenly feel so much more multidimensional. Blah. And the bottom line here is I've become more than I have always been. This sounds so stupid. And I'm rather seen as one person. Nah, wrong. There's so much rambling going on in the script. I don't know if I should actually talk about all of this.